forward. Cool. Well, we're going to get started. If we have time at the end, I can pop back into that question. But I thought today would be a good day to kind of check in with something that's part of The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. So if you don't own the book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, also known as the MREA, also known as the Red Book, also known as the Real Estate Bible, that is a book that Gary Keller and Jay Papasan wrote. Yes, Keller of Keller Williams, if you don't know him yet. This is the outline of how to be a successful real estate agent. It's an excellent, excellent resource. People who are not in Keller Williams, who are real estate agents, are huge fans and use this book. It is really thoughtfully put together on how to run your business, how to get started, how to keep things going, how to grow. There are other books in that series, but that's a great one to start with. And so anytime I'm looking for topics for launch, I'm often going back to one of Gary Keller, Jay Papasan's books. The One Thing is another one. I do use other resources as well, but I thought this would be a good one to come back to as we're rounding out the last couple weeks of the year. We don't have team meeting the next 2 weeks, but we do have launch and it'll be more of a workshop style. So I thought I'd leave you this week with some good kind of momentum for your mindset. And then the next 2 weeks, we'll talk more about specific things you're working on, questions you have, projects or goals moving into next year. It'll be more of a discussion the next 2 weeks. So keep that in mind as we roll into the next 2 weeks of launch. But today, I thought that going and touching base on a piece of what's in the MREA is removing your limiting beliefs. And I feel like whenever momentum slows down, that's a time when it's really easy to get into kind of a rut in terms of your mindset. Things slow down, the weather changes, it gets cold, it gets gray outside. It's easy to be just kind of cozy in and not really want to do much. And it's also easy to start thinking negatively. So Lizzie, I think your microphone's on. If you could turn that on mute, please. So I think this is a good thing to touch on just with winter. If you didn't feel like this year was what you wanted it to be, if the pressure of, being a rock star next year and getting all your ducks in a row is kind of crushing you or causing you to feel stuck, then it's probably your mindset. So I thought that would be a good thing to touch on today. So in The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, there's something called the 6 perspectives. Step number 5 of these perspectives is removing your limiting beliefs. So first of all, what are limiting beliefs? And this is something that if you've got paper and a pen, this is a good thing to write down. I want you to think about when you're faced with a challenge or when you start thinking about what you need to do for your business, what things pop up in your head, and specifically what kinds of excuses or reasons why you cannot do something come up in your mind. So you're about to start your reaching out to people in your sphere, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna text these people, I'm gonna call these people, I'm gonna go on social media. What stops you from doing that? A really common one, I don't want to bug them. I don't want to be annoying. They've got more important things to do, right? Has anybody had that feeling? Oh, well, I think I can talk myself out of doing this right now if I just think like, oh, they probably don't want to be bothered. So I just won't do that, right? That's a really common limiting belief. What about I don't have time? I just don't have enough time. I've got too many distractions. I've got kids at home. I gotta rush off to this thing. I wasted 20 minutes on Instagram and now I don't have time. There's not enough time in the day. I can't make it happen. I don't know how I'm going to contact all these people. There's no time. What about I'm not a phone person. I'm not outgoing. I don't have anything to say. Yeah, does this sound familiar? Or that's really not my place. For me, the biggest limiting belief that I am still trying to get over this mountain of is, oh, I'm not a luxury agent. I mean, I didn't grow up in a luxury home. I didn't grow up with luxury people. My friends aren't luxury. That's not my place. That's not my market. Says who, right? I'm looking at these listings for $800,000 homes with terrible photos and descriptions. The agent doesn't return my phone call. I could do a better job for that seller, right? It's just in my head. It's a limiting belief. And the very first step to overcoming these limiting beliefs, to removing them or to shrinking them, is to acknowledge that they exist. And this can be true with a lot of things in life, but sometimes something, that little voice gets louder and louder and becomes so regular, so commonplace, so a part of your daily living that you forget that you have the option to turn down the volume, that you don't even realize that that's there all the time. And sometimes you've just got to acknowledge it to cause it to shrink back. So writing these down is a great way to acknowledge that these exist. It's a great way to be very in your face about what is happening in your head. You know, hearing it, kind of blowing it off. Well, it's not that bad. And it's only when I do this. And so, but if you actually take the time to write these things down, it is very effective in understanding how limiting these things are, what exactly you're telling yourself, what that little voice is saying to you on a regular basis. That's huge. That's a big step. It sounds silly. I'm telling you, just write it down. Just write it all down. Just stream of consciousness, get all the thoughts out that you're hearing. And if you can't come up with more, just think about anytime you're faced with a challenge, anytime you're trying to get some momentum going in your business, make strides, work on a project, start up a habit, plan for your week. What is holding you back? Because almost always it's you. It's in your head. It's your excuses, it's your limiting beliefs. And that's not something to beat yourself up about, but it's something to recognize is a problem, to recognize is a negative force, and to recognize that you have the power to turn down the volume. So taking that first step to recognize what those limiting beliefs are is a really big, important step. And I say this every week, giving yourself thinking time every week or even every day, just setting some time aside where you have zero distractions and you can really focus and think through things. This is crazy valuable time. You will get this back tenfold. It will show up in your business in a bunch of different ways. It will help you get momentum and be successful. Taking thinking time is so important. This is a perfect thinking time activity. So writing down what your limiting beliefs are, excuses, things that you hear in your head that are negative about what you're not good at or what you can't do or why you can't do something, huge. Write them down. The second thing to do is, okay, so I've written these things down. Have you found yourself saying like, well, it's like not that big of a deal. It's fine. Like, it doesn't affect me that much. Everybody has these thoughts, right? Which is true. Everybody has limiting beliefs. But just saying that, like, it's fine. That's just how I am. Like, is that empowering? Does that make you feel like you can move forward past this? Does that mean that this limiting belief is winning? So, recognizing what exactly this means in terms of cost to you. If you're listening to this voice, if you're letting the volume get louder and louder, if you're allowing these thoughts to stop you or really slow you down or cut you off from doing these really excellent activities, to building these great habits, to growing these relationships, to seeing your business really take off. If you let these things get in the way, what's the cost to you? It's important to recognize that. So you're looking at your list and you're like, okay, well, that's not my place. Here's mine. That's not my place. I'm not a luxury agent. I work in a different price point. That's just not where I belong. Okay, why? First of all, but mainly, what does it cost me to say that to myself? That means that anytime there's an opportunity to connect with somebody who owns a house in that price range, to go to a listing appointment, to have a showing, to talk to somebody about what's happening in the market. Every time I'm stopping myself from that opportunity because it's not my place, I am stopping myself from an entire string of business, an entire group of opportunities, um, a pretty significant increase in my commission, right? My average commissions. And I'm cutting myself off from potential really excellent relationships that get me towards my big why, which is having a positive impact in my community, connecting with people who own homes in that price range. These are people who have money and power in the community and connections and can help me make a difference. So why am I limiting myself? It's entirely in my head, right? So what it costs you is an important thing to recognize, because I don't know about you, but if I really start to think about what I could be gaining or the strides I could be making or the people I could be helping if I get past those limiting beliefs, that's really powerful. And if I don't, where does that push me? So if you feel like you're on a hamster wheel, if you feel like you're pushing a giant boulder up a hill, this could very well be the reason. These limiting beliefs could very well be the reason. So once you recognize the cost, then you have to figure out how to upgrade those thoughts, right? Trade them in for liberating truths. Oh shit, am I still on? There we go. Sorry about that. So how do I switch these thoughts to liberating truths? Liberating truths are a way to switch around what you're hearing into something positive. So a commonplace one, I don't want to bother them, right? I don't want to be annoying. I don't want to call people. I feel like I'm bugging them. I'm wasting their time. They don't want to hear from me. Switch that around to I'm really great at helping people, right? If you're connecting with somebody, you're there to give something of value. You're there to find out what they need and see how you can help them. You're there to check in and make sure they're doing well, because God knows in this year, especially, checking in with people is really important, right? So it's not about I'm bugging them, it's about I am here to bring them something positive. I am here to help them out. I am here to connect them with people. It might not necessarily mean that they need a real estate agent right now, but maybe they need you as a friend, a resource, somebody to check in with. Maybe maybe they're trying to find a job and you can help connect them with a new job. There's so many other ways you can be helpful to people. And then they see you as a helper. And so when they need help with real estate, they're looking to you. So reaching out to people isn't necessarily an annoying thing. Think about it as it's not necessarily like, oh, they're lucky to hear from me, but I've got something to offer. I have something of value. I'm here to help, and so I'm just going to check in with them, right? How often have you gotten like a phone call from a friend or a text and they're just like, hey, just want to see how you're doing, right? Like, that's nice. They don't want anything, they're just checking in, they're just here to help. And it doesn't happen very often. So I don't want to bother them is baloney, right? But switching that into a liberating truth can be really helpful. So for me, okay, that's luxury is not my place. I'm not a luxury agent. I can switch that to I work really hard for all my clients, regardless of price point, and I will do everything to sell your home. I have lots of experience with areas all over the Milwaukee area with clients of all backgrounds, and I can tell you what will attract people to your home. I can have a creative, alternate perspective because I don't only work in luxury, I also work in all price points. So there's a way you can spin it. There's a way you can make it sound better, right? So there's a way you can feel empowered by that statement. Think of it like an advertising agent, right? Think of it like you're writing a listing description for a house that is challenging. Put your positive spin on it and write that down too. Look at your limiting beliefs and then in the next column over, switch them to those liberating truths. Switch them to those empowering statements. Switch them to something that when you start to hear that negative limiting belief, you can flip it backwards into that positive statement that's going to give you the motivation to work through something, right? And then the last thing is to actually put it into action. So you're not only recognizing that those beliefs exist, you're not only figuring out what they would cost you to continue to listen to those things, right? Where do you turn the volume down? What's the priority of these things you're hearing? And then switching them into something positive, but then you really have to live it, right? So if you're having that limiting belief that um, you don't want to bother people and you switch it to I'm great at helping people, well then how do you live that? What's something you could do to connect with people, to build relationships in a way that you're helping them? Anybody have anything? What's a nice thing to hear from somebody else, to receive from somebody else? What's something you could do that would be minimal cost but big impact? Has anybody done anything recently or thinking about it?
I've made some holiday designs on I don't know if it's Command or Kelly, like whatever. I think it was like the app. I haven't
Yeah.
sent any of them out, but like I've tried like 4 or 5 different designs on that to like send out to people that I have email, potentially text. I think it would be kind of weird to send like a happy holidays like picture through text, but the people who I have email in my database, I was planning on sending to within like the next week, but nothing like
Yeah.
concrete. But I've messed around with the logos or
Yeah.
templates, I should say, not logos, for the holiday cards.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, just a little message, especially if you can send that and have a little personal note with it. It's just nice to hear from people. So that's an easy thing you can do. It looks polished. You're kind of practicing, using those systems too. But it's just one way to connect with people. Does anybody do handwritten cards? Does anybody like receiving handwritten cards? Yeah. How often do you get a note in the mail that's not a bill or an advertisement? Like like maybe a couple times a year, maybe on your birthday, maybe Christmas. But to have a handwritten note that's addressed to you with a message to you is like unheard of. So that's something you can do for very minimal cost. And I cannot tell you what impact that has on people. I had a client the other day, well, a new client who I sold a house to them 3 years ago, 4 years ago. I was the listing agent. At the time, I was still, I would write a contract for a customer if they wanted to make an offer. So I don't really do that anymore to avoid any conflict, but they were a customer, not even my client. And they purchased the home. I put them on my mailing list. I sent them notes once in a while just to check in and see how they were doing. I thought I lost them as a client when they listed their house for sale earlier this year. Turns out it was a family member who listed it for them. That wasn't going so well. So when it came time to purchase the new place, they reached out to me because I'd been sending them notes in the mail since they bought their house 4 years ago. And I'm talking like a couple a year, other touches, but notes in the mail, just a couple a year. They had all my contact information. They had remembered a positive experience with me. Those notes were really lovely to receive. And so they called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, we want to buy a new place. It's for like 3 times what they were paying for the old place." And it's just because I was reaching out on a regular basis. I wasn't expecting them to come back to me and say, "Oh my God, I got your card. How wonderful." But I just wanted to come from a place of contribution, something I could give, just a little smile in your day, right? Super easy, nothing super elaborate, just a couple of quick sentences. And I didn't feel like I was bugging them. And it turned into business later. So just those little things can make a huge difference. Just shooting somebody a text. I don't know if anybody's done this, but I like to do like a 30-second video and I'll text it to somebody because it makes such a difference to see someone's face, especially right now. So I'll just do a quick 30-second video like, "Hey, just checking in to see how you're doing. I know the holidays are picking up. If there's any ideas you need for shopping local, I'm your gal. Just shoot me a text." and I just send a little video. And it's something about seeing someone's face that makes a real big difference, I think. So, little things like that can really, be a service to people rather than feeling like you're bugging them. So putting those liberating truths, putting those positive statements into action is really the most important step, right? Like you've got to recognize those beliefs, you've got to work through all that, but then you have to live it. And I think, circling back to what Alex said about all these classes, it's great to take classes, it's great to absorb information, it's great to think about what you learned, but if you're not putting to action, even just one nugget, really, um, then you're just kind of filling up your notebook, right? So if you're taking the time to recognize you have these limiting beliefs, that's a huge step. But if you're not switching those into positive thoughts or positive empowering thoughts and putting them into action, then it's very easy to fall back into that cycle of, I don't have time, I don't want to bug them, that's not my place, I'm not as good as that person, right? It's very easy to fall into that. And I feel like this time of year, um, especially as we become even more insular, it's very easy to get on social media, scroll, 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 watch what everybody else is doing, feel bad about what you're doing or not doing, and kind of get into a rut. And of all times of year, this time of year, and yes, I know holidays are coming, but this is when you need to get your momentum going. This is when you're doing the work to kick off next year in a positive way, to get business rolling. First quarter, if you can win first quarter, if you can hit your goals first quarter, you are more likely to hit your goals for the year. If you can get those relationship connections going, which what better excuse than the holidays, right? If you can make those connections and get some momentum going and get out of your negative mindset and think of abundance rather than limiting beliefs, rather than things are happening to you, if you feel empowered, especially this time of year, you're going to have that momentum to move into next year ready to rock. I my team and I have been working on setting goals and planning since October. We really ramped it up in November. This is the time of year where I kind of see my energy waning a little bit. I get distracted. I'm intentionally pulling time away for family, for other things, but I'm also reminding myself that that time I do have, I'm trying to use very thoughtfully, very purposely, being intentional about my actions and knowing that whatever I'm doing now are seeds I'm planting that I should see grow in the first quarter. So I think this is a great one, a great exercise that you can do, whether you're brand new or you've been in the business for a few months. This applies to you. Everybody has limiting beliefs. All of us do. Even once you have more success in business, there's always going to be those things that creep up that start to increase in volume in your head. And it's good to take a moment. And this time of year, like I've said before, fourth quarter is my reflection time. I like to do that each quarter, but especially at the end of the year. Everybody's kind of thinking of the last year, huh? And thinking about next year. So this is a really good activity to do and to give yourself some action steps moving into next year. So I think it's a good thing to recognize. It's something that doesn't get talked about very often. But like I said, everybody has limiting beliefs. And I think it's really good to use your thinking time to go through these 4 steps. Recognize what these things are that you're telling yourself, to understand what it's costing you to have the volume up on high on these limiting beliefs, to switch them around to something empowering, and to put them into action. So those are those 4 steps that I encourage you to use this week, to think about and to go through this activity. And I want to hear about how that's going for you, and if you've noticed a difference. Even just a couple, a week or a couple of days, if you just recognize what you're hearing for a few days and then take the time to think about how you can switch that up. All those things can really add up and really make a big difference, because ultimately you can be, super motivated. You can want to work really hard. You can be happy to go out on showings at any time, all those things. you can really get some good momentum going in business. But if your mindset is not right, if your mindset is all over the place or dragging you down, it's going to make everything harder. And it doesn't matter how successful you are or what time of year it is or whether you're on a team or not. That mindset piece is huge. That's why I talk about it a lot. So I highly recommend that you take the time to go through this activity and put it in practice and see what you notice is a difference. Even if it's just one thing, one limiting belief that you're like, I'm going to really take the time to, you know, figure out what I'm hearing, figure out how I can empower myself to flip the script and what I can do moving into 2021 to wrap up 2020 with this in mind. So I'm curious to hear from you. What do you have either that you wrote down at the beginning or what you've kind of been thinking about as I've been talking that has come up for a limiting belief for you? Because I am guaranteeing you that at least somebody else on this call has a similar limiting belief. Bridget?
Last week I had my first, like, I would call it real buyer consult meeting with a person who was not my friend or family, someone like referred to me. And I was really nervous, sweating. I'm like, oh my God, do I remember exactly how to do this? So I watched Janine's productivity video on buyer consult, and I was kind of like doubting myself. And I was like, why should this person work with me? Like, I'm new, I don't know anything. They should really be working with like an experienced realtor. And like in that moment, while I was doubting myself and totally limiting myself, Janine said something very similar to you and was like, if you are sitting there thinking you're not good enough, get that out of your head. You are good enough. And I just think like this is really helpful because as a new agent, it's easy for us to be like, well, yeah, I don't know. They probably shouldn't work with us but I literally had that exact thought and moment where I luckily like got my mind right before the call and went in with confidence to say like, no, like I'm going to take care of these people. And like, we can do this, new agents out there, like we are good enough. So I don't know, that was my experience that just happened. I don't know if anyone else has had those thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great one, Bridget. And I have to say that even now there are times, especially because I work more with buyers than sellers and I'm, increasing my listings, that especially when I go into listing appointments, there are times when I'm like, I don't know if I'm the right person for this. I don't have enough experience. Then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do everything I can to help this person. I am coming from contribution. I have pure intentions. I am going to make this as fun and pleasant as I can. Just what you bring to the table as you, not as you, the real estate agent, but as you, is a huge piece of their experience. And so just understanding what you have to contribute as a person, I think is a really big piece of that. But yeah, it's totally normal to feel that way, but I'm glad that you found the encouragement to, walk into that confidently and work through it. That's awesome. Anybody else?
I have one.
Okay.
So I work with a lot of investors. That's Marcus sends me their way from Bigger Pockets. And so these people come in, whether they're in state or not, doing a ton of research on this website known for making good investment choices. Mm-hmm. And so I find it intimidating or get the thought where they've done all this research, like why do they need, I don't have my own investment properties yet. Why would they reach out to me? Why am I the person? And so now that I've gone through, I don't know, I've had like 7 or 8 of these buyers already. I find myself realizing that all this research online is the rosy picture, and there is no one there to tell them that. First, I was like, what the heck's a BRRRR? When someone was saying BRRRR, 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 it's BRRR. It's buy, renovate, rent, and refinance, just for you guys to know. So they were using all this jargon that I didn't understand. And I find that if you've got people from bigger pockets, they don't understand the Milwaukee market. That is your value prop, is bringing that back down to earth, because these investors think there are all these wholesale deals out there and they're going to find that gem and they're going to be able to make a bunch of money. And you basically have to have, I call it a come to Jesus meeting, and saying that's not really possible or feasible, but here's an adjustment and how you could get there. So finding that, yeah, they might know a lot, but they don't really know a lot.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think of, I have a really, I'm going to really botch this quote, but it makes me think of, somebody interviewed Michelle Obama a while back and they were like, how does it feel to be first lady and sitting at these tables with all these super powerful and knowledgeable people? And she was like, the key is understanding that they don't know everything. Like they don't know, they act like they know everything. They really don't, and whoever you're working with, you've got value, whether it's because you're local, whether it's because of your perspective. They have some information that's good, but why do they need you? Like they need you too. So they don't know everything.
Yeah, I think it was, her quote was something like, well, first thing you realize is they're not actually that smart. Something like that. But yeah, I went through the similar thought.
Yeah, totally. So they're coming to you for a reason. So it's easy to get in your head, but like Casey said, if you think about your value proposition, what can I bring to the table in this situation? There's always something. Anybody else with some recent or continuing limiting beliefs? Kevin, you said you're brand new.
That is correct.
Awesome, welcome.
Well, I mean, I've done a couple of these, but I haven't sold anything, haven't listed anything, don't have any clients.
Okay.
But yes, I'm brand new.
Awesome. Well, and when you're brand new, it's easy to have limiting beliefs, right? To feel like, I haven't sold anything, I haven't helped anybody buy anything, I don't have any clients right now.
Right.
So,
that's my limiting belief, is that I don't have any experience. But I was talking to someone who, I was going over my goals with for next year. And I said that I don't have any experience, so I don't know how I'm going to reach my goals. And she said, I don't have real estate experience, but I have life experience, which is going to add a lot of value to a lot of people, which really just shattered that limiting belief. So
I'll give you this nugget here too. Rarely do people, I mean, they might ask the question, but it's less rare than what you actually think. People don't actually always ask, like, how long have you been doing this? They don't ever bring it up. So if you don't bring it up, they won't bring it up. And then you just like act like you've been there. And then all of a sudden you actually have the experience and then can talk about it. But that's something that I found really interesting in the beginning, is I thought all these people, like, I was going to have to overcome this objection. Nobody asks it. It's wild.
It is wild. If you seem to know what you're doing, there's no reason to ask. And Janine has a great response to that, that I used to use when I started out, and I didn't know she was using it too, but I think it's so great, is, you know what? I feel like I've been doing this forever. It's such a natural fit. And then you all have a giggle and you move on.
Well, I've sold 2 homes. I mean, I wasn't the realtor, but I sold 2 homes.
Yeah,
they were mine.
Process.
Yeah.
Well, and you can say, that was one of my limiting beliefs when I started, was I was renting. I had rented forever. I didn't even own property, and I was selling people property. It felt like such a liar, but at the end of the day, like, I had systems, I understood the process. So that was my value proposition. Kevin, you might not have been the realtor in the situation. You understand what it's like to be in their shoes because you've been there too. So we all have something to contribute. We all have something of value. Experience. We also have excellent resources just by being a part of this office. So if you're thinking like, oh man, I don't know if I can pull this off. You're not out there on your own. You're not like a little baby tadpole with no experience and nobody to help you, right? Like we're all here. You've got tons of resources. You have between classes and other agents and the KW community, like you can figure out anything, right? So if somebody's like has a crazy question that you can't answer, that's okay. Like you can tell them. Part of the benefit of working with me is I'm connected to this amazing community of agents. If anything comes up, if there's any questions, if we need to creative problem solve or work through something, if I can't help come up with something, I have an amazing community behind me. And that's a huge selling point to working with you, right? Because not every agent out there has that resource. You know, there truly are agents out there who are just floating around on their own. So even if it's not you yourself, if you have those connections, that's a value. So that's definitely worth sharing with people too. If you feel like, oh, I don't know about me myself, that you can say, you know what, I'm going to work really hard for you. I have lots of time to focus on you. And if I don't know the answer to something, I've got a great community that I can go to and get the right answers. So I'm not going to fake it. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to make stuff up. And I'm not super busy like these other agents. So I can really give you my time. You know, there's always something that you can offer. These are great. Anybody else? All right. Well, I highly encourage you to take the time to kind of think through those things over the next week. It's something that I have to do on a regular basis, especially if I'm just feeling stuck. Usually that's tied to a limiting belief, something that's crept up, something that's changed in my mind, the volume's gone up higher, and I've been too busy to notice. And I'm like, man, why do I just feel stuck? I just can't get going. You know, it's usually something like that. And if I can just make that tweak, you know, that's an easy thing to be able to, you know, give yourself the time to think about it, think about how you can make that change, write it down so it feels real, and then put it into action, hold yourself accountable. You know, it's simple. It's not easy, it's simple. So, you know, it doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to buy a new program or go to an expensive training. Like, just take the time to take those steps, and you will find yourself out of that rut. And it, like I said, mindset is so huge in this business. You know, you're an independent contractor, you're running your own business, you're wearing lots of hats. So you've got to have a strong mindset, and nobody's perfect all the time. So checking back, it's a regular thing, right? It's like brushing your teeth or showering. You can't just do it once and be like, I'm good. Like, you have to keep doing it all the time. All of us do, all of us. So it may not look that way, you know, especially on social media. It's like, well, I did it once and I'm amazing, and here I go, I'm gonna manifest my destiny. Like, great, but you have to keep working on it. You have to keep checking back. You've got to keep growing. You've got to keep learning. It's all part of the deal. So with that in mind, next week we're going to have more of an open forum. Is there anything that we haven't really touched on, you haven't noticed in the classes, that's kind of been in the back of your mind that you'd like to talk more about, that you want to make sure I bring some resources in regards to that, or that I'm prepared to talk about in the next 2 weeks? You don't have to have it right this moment. If you do, pop in. Otherwise, if you want to shoot me a message this week, you know, up and before next Tuesday, that would be great too.
I'd be interested in how much of command to dip into, because there's a lot of command, and there's like the 60-day program of command, but is there like a basic minimum amount of command that you can start with?
That's a great idea, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, as a quick response to that, I would say that, you know, that 100 contacts in command that we've talked about is like a good basic to start with. Just get the names in there, and not just the names, but the phone numbers, the emails, the addresses, and the activities that get that information for you. A really simple thing you can do to try to get those details is to do a drawing. Put something on social media, shoot out a text to people. Hey, I'm doing a drawing for whatever, you know, dinner certificate, take out some awesome place, or, you know, local shop gift card. And all you have to do is send me your, you know, email address, whatever, so I can mail it to you if you win, so that I have your contact info to tell you if you won. That's a really simple way to do it. If you just say, I'm doing a drawing.
The best line I heard last week was, if somebody in your contact list in command doesn't know you're a real estate agent, then it's not a real contact.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, we'll kind of go into that a little bit more, because I will tell you, I don't use command nearly as much as I could, and I have a plan in mind for implementing it, but I think it's too overwhelming to be like, oh, I'm gonna do all the things. I'm gonna do the the Facebook things and the email alerts and this and that. If you start with the basics, that's a good place to start, and then it depends on what your goals are in terms of contacting people. But once you get it set up, it's pretty automatic, which is pretty cool. Anybody else with things that you'll want to touch on in the next 2 weeks?
I don't know if we covered this, but I just learned, for example, that you pay your taxes quarterly. Oops. And so I'm going to be re-reviewing the agent financials portions that we just had 2 weeks ago, but maybe a jumpstart version for new people, just a basics, how do you pay yourself? Do you set up an LLC? What have you, would be really nice.
Yeah, that's a big piece. And there's the agent financials class. There are a couple of things just in the KW resources. And we have in the past, we had somebody come in who was an accountant to really talk through some of the tax stuff, since we're not allowed to give tax advice. But it would be something we could circle back with potentially. Yeah, that would probably be a good everybody thing rather than a launch class, but I think it's a really important thing.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking general, so when you first get started, just really baseline, easy stuff.
Yeah, put aside 25 to 30% of every commission check.
Yeah,
pay your
that would have been nice.
Shit. You've got till March to pay.
Charlie told me that out the gate. Team leader Charlie, he's like, he's like, you just probably want to just have that thought in your head, because if things start rolling, you probably are going to want to shell out. I mean, knowing me, that's something that I have to have it into.
Yeah, there's all kinds of advice out there, when a check comes in, automatically have it split into different accounts. There's different approaches to it, but yes, setting money aside for taxes is a great idea, because all of a sudden it's the end of the year and you're like, I made all this money, this is great. Oh no, I owe this huge tax bill.
Yeah, you're just so organized. I would love to hear your take on it. That's why I asked, because I just like the way you set stuff up.
Thank you. I will say that my first year, that was, I knew I had to set money aside for taxes, but I still didn't set enough aside. And that was a pretty shocking bill that I had to delay my payment of, which a lot of real estate agents do, but it shouldn't necessarily be the norm, in my opinion. Yeah, and it did come down to me setting up my accounts so that every check that came in, I pulled percentages out. Now the way I have it set up, I have payroll. Because I have a full-time assistant, it's worth paying for payroll. So I have her paid on payroll and I pay myself. So I have a salary from my team, and then whatever else comes through is the business money. So I know every year what my personal budget is based on my salary, and then everything else is what goes back into the business. What do we pull for savings? Yeah, it's complicated stuff, you guys. I know how to be broke. I don't know how to have money, so I'm still learning. But I can give some tips, and I can see what the leadership team might be able to offer as well, because I do think that's an important piece. Yeah, it's just one of the things you don't think about, and all of a sudden you're like, oh no, taxes. Do I get a refund? No, no, you don't. Yeah.
I have
So that's a good one.
one that I would love is, I know Kirsten and Stephanie did an amazing YouTube that I saw on like how to put together a really competitive offer. And I just don't think I could get enough ammunition in my back pocket in this kind of market when most of us are just working with buyers and we're up against minimum 5 offers. Plus, I would love even like more. Like I can't get enough stuff that you can do to make your offer, or little like tidbits of reaching out to the agent or saying this to the agent or anything to help give me an upper hand, because I'm just worried that all year I'm going to be chasing around rejected offers, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah. They did a class. There's a launch that I did that was called Accountability to Your Co-Broke. That's full of pointers on how to build that relationship, be a positive, force I can give you an example. Last night I wrote an offer on a house that it had been sitting a little while, but of course, as soon as you write an offer, there's 2 other offers, right? That always happens. And I've worked with this agent before, and I had called her early on just because I do that as a practice to like make that connection. Hey, we might be writing, when do they want to close? What time do you need to reply? Do you have any offers? Stuff like that. She had such a positive experience working with me last time that she's like super jazzed that we're sending in an offer. And she's like, yeah, well, do you mind if we reply by this time tomorrow? I'm like, all I ask is that, the sellers consider giving us a chance with a counter if something, this other offer that comes in is higher or whatever. I can't make them make those decisions, and she can't either, but being in good graces with your co-broke is a huge advantage and is really important, because God knows you're going to work with them again. So that class, I think, is really is full of some good tidbits that are not necessarily how you use the contract, but how you can set your client up for success. So I recommend watching that one. That one was early in COVID, so it's probably spring, summer. It might not have a label yet. I'll see what I can find out and get it labeled. If you're ever not sure about what videos go with what topics, just go into the launch page and search launch today, and all my posts about what the topic of the day is will pop up, and then you can match it up with the video date.
Where do you go in to search launch today?
In the launch page on Facebook. In the launch group.
Thank you.
Yeah, launch group, or lately I've been posting them just in the North Shore group, but that's a good way to search for topics that aren't labeled yet. Yeah, that's a good one though. In this market, honestly, understanding the contract and how you can manipulate it is a big piece of knowing how to have a competitive offer. Yeah, that's a good one. Anybody else have anything I should keep in mind for the next couple of weeks? I'm going to keep it kind of open forum. I'll come with some topics in mind. I'll come with some information. Just kind of see what people bring.
I'm going through appraisal issues. So any information you give me on those fun ones.
Yes, that's a good one. I just had one too. I've only had 2 this year, and they're with the same appraiser.
Yeah, like without talking, I got questions.
So can I interject something on appraising?
Yeah.
Back when I was an appraiser.
Really?
Yeah.
See, Kevin, you got all kinds of info to contribute.
I loved going up to an inspection and having the listing agent, give me the comps they used to price it.
Yep.
Because then I could see how they got to that number, and it just kind of helped me get my head where they are, because they are the one that created the market where the buyer and the seller came together, which is the market value. So I always like that.
Yeah, could you be like a special guest on this?
I just was.
Yeah, make sure you're in the class next week. We'll touch on it. Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point and something I didn't know when I started. When I started, I was under the misunderstanding that I wasn't allowed at the appraisal. And then I learned that I could be, and now I always go to my appraisals. And you know, you can't influence your appraiser, but you can provide a packet of information to show where you're coming from. And I'm always sure to put a little written bit in there too. And also, if we got other offers that were of a similar price range, I'll include the first page of those and just strike out the buyer's name.
Is this as a listing agent or as a buyer's
Yeah.
agent? I mean,
Listing agent. Yeah, as a buyer's agent, you can, in a careful way, find out if the listing agent is doing that. And if you come from the perspective of, you know, we're in this as a team, we have a common goal. So I've recently had some appraisal things come up. So I just want to, you know, make sure we're being proactive as best we can. You know, do you usually meet the appraiser there? Do you usually give them a packet? Would it help if I sent you my comparables we used when we wrote the offer? You know, whatever you can do, because the appraiser connects with the listing agent. So as the buyer's agent, you usually don't have their contact. Yeah, we can definitely talk more about that though. That's a good one. All right, well, we're near the end of our little chat for today. Like I said, next week and the following week will be more interactive. You know, prior to COVID, our launch classes were more of a workshop. So I want to bring some of that back into it and make sure that if you do have any lingering questions or even just need information to be directed to a past video or somebody, a person or some information as a resource, that we make sure that you're getting that. So feel free to send me an email, a text, a Facebook message prior to the next 2 weeks, and I'll then at least have an idea of what you want to make sure we touch on. So if there's any resources I need to put together, research I need to do, I can do that. And some of it will just be on the fly, and that's okay too. So thanks for coming. I hope this was helpful and motivating, gave you a little something to do as we wrap up the year. And as always, you can set up accountability calls with me, 20 minutes just to check in, see how you're doing on your goals, your projects, your habit building, your time management, and how you're set up for 2021. Because y'all, we just have a few weeks left. Like, really, if you don't have your goal set for next year, get them together. It's time. They don't have to be big and complicated, but have something in mind. So yeah, let me know if you want to chat about that. Shoot me a text. We'll set up a time, and I'll see you all next week, Tuesday at 10:30.